Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Chicago White Sox fans, and welcome to episode 96 of the Sox On 35th podcast. We are ready to wrap up the 2025 season, put a bow on it, and never talk about it again. I am joined by Nik Gaur and Brett Haffner as we do our final recap. Gentlemen, how are you both?
Doing well. Yeah, good to be back, rounding out the season. Got to give a shout out to Duke for getting married, and that's why he's not here. I mean, part of why he's not here, he's just a very busy guy lately, but congrats to him. And Jordan, you got to be next. I mean, two of the three main Sox on 35th
That's
podcast
really
guys.
funny. No, that's really funny that you think I'm anywhere near that. No, I won't be next. I congratulations to Duke. First of all, yes, I am filling in for him these past couple shows. He's got a busy life, and I don't know. It's gonna be a while. That's all I'll say. You two can enjoy it. But yeah, congratulations, Duke. I will leave it at that.
and no comment about that topic from yours truly.
No, Brett. I mean, if you want to take the lead here and kind of,
I don't know, Jordan. I think we're doing just dandy in the same boat. But yeah, it's been kind of weird not watching some Sox games recently. It's been fun to watch the playoffs. Always love a good Cubs beatdown. Can't complain about that. But yeah, it's things are going good. It's weird to be thinking about the Sox again.
Yeah, it is. I always like that we take maybe a week between the wrap up and then our season episode. Just be like, all right, let's decompress. Let's really move away from some of the, I guess, emotions that come towards the end of a season where it's like, I mean, we'll talk about this, but they had almost not lost 100 games this year, and kind of some of the back and forth on Twitter and the discourse and how certain people feel about it. I think it's just nice to take that step back for a week, enjoy some playoff baseball, be like, all right, let's put a bow on this and move on. And that is exactly what we're here to do. Before we get started, though, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Sox on 35th. And finally, SoxOn35th.com is the website. Still putting out some great stuff. I will continue to shamelessly plug my pitching coach potential article. I do want to put a hitting coach candidates article together as well. So be on the lookout for that. I think that's everything. Thanks for the support, everyone. I do want to start with that instead of ending with it. It's been a long couple seasons. And it's not easy, as I've said to other people who cover the Sox at this juncture. It's not easy to do this. So we appreciate any and all support we get because we're struggling right along with everybody who's listening. So as we think about our wrap up, I do want to shout out the fans and everyone who either at the ballpark says hello or listens or leaves comments, things like that. I think it's always nice to know that I've said it a million times. There's a person on the other side of this all, and we're not just screaming into the void. It's always very much appreciated. That being said, let's jump into it. Final season record, 60-102. If you placed the over anything up to 60.5, and it was all the way down at 49.5 at one point. You ended up pretty good at this point in the season. I will ask you to start by simply describing the season in one word.
For me, I would go with just bad. And I thought about doing encouraging or a step forward. I mean, that's not one word because I guess compared to last year it is. But at the same time, if we recorded this a day after the season, I probably would have done that. But a week removed, having been watching all these playoff games and seeing how far we are from that, it's still, next year is kind of the year where I want to see the White Sox not make the playoffs. I mean, of course, I'd love that, but just get to a point where they're at least playing competitive games regularly. We kind of saw that in the second half, and that's why I wouldn't be upset if one of you used a more positive adjective to describe the season. But I just want to see that over the course of a full season. And at least we're not breaking records for most losses ever anymore, but I just really want to start seeing at least respectable, next year, go win 78 games, be a regular bad team, not a triple-digit loss team.
Move from fun bad just to regular bad. I think you point out exactly why we wait a little bit, because I have felt the same. You start watching these playoff games, it's not so bad that you're like, these guys are playing a different sport than the White Sox, But you also realize how far they have to go. I think about like Milwaukee's bullpen, watching the Cubs in Milwaukee series. Like they're just throwing guys out there, throwing 100 miles an hour, like guy after guy. And it's kind of like the Rays, where I'm like, I've never heard of this guy, and he's coming out throwing 100. Like there is a long way to go.
Or just look at all these aces getting out there, right? These guys are going 6-7 innings of one hit ball. Like we're far away from that. But when I thought about this season, I honestly think the thing that best sums up my take would be less bad. That's obviously 2 words, but I think less bad.
I gave you this
perfect.
in advance. You had a chance to find
I have a word.
One word.
No, I have a word.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I do have a word.
Okay.
I'm just saying, in the context of what was given, originally I thought encouraging was the word, but I think that the word progress kind of hits it on the nail for me. Like, there's definitely some good steps that have gone on. I'm generally one of the more optimistic, hopeful fans, I think. That's just who I am. But I think progress just kind of really entails what things look like from now on forward. Because, I think if you were to ask the same question after last season, I don't think you could have even touched positivity with a 1,000,000-foot pole. But at least we're in a position where we actually can this year.
I do like it too, where it's like progress is a positive. It generally is a positive word, but it's not like, oh my God, this was awesome. Like progress from last year is like the bar is on the floor. So I do like that word. I don't hate either answer. Mine was just fine. Like it happened. It like I was not overly offended by the year. But at the same time, like maybe towards the end, I started getting more long-term answers to questions I've had. But at the same time, you enter an off season, and you're not like. Part of me still wonders if we're going to see enough growth year over year, and we'll get into some of the off season stuff. But that's where I'm just like, it was fine. Like there were things that were awesome about it. But there were things on the flip side that I thought were going to be awesome that weren't. And I think when you have all of those balance out, it comes down to it was fine. Like they were. And good,
I think like
Nik
said it so well. Like, I think if you were to have done this a day after the season ended, I'd be feeling different just because there were a lot of more enjoyable things the last month or two, right?
Yeah, and they won 8-0 on the final game of the season.
But at the end of the day, still 61 up to. Like if, and obviously, if you look at certain times of, hey, they played on a 75 win pace for X number of games, right? I think extrapolating that at the end of the season being like, okay, this is still a 102 loss team. And I don't want to, as a fan, I don't want to be like accepting of that, if that makes sense. Like, I just don't want to be like, okay, cool. Now we're a 102 loss team. Great. No, 102 losses, it is still horrible.
So let me ask you this, because we keep harping on the record and the 102 losses. And I know towards the end, there was a lot of talk about they might avoid 100, but they ended up at 102. Is there something about that mark that maybe informs your opinion or bothers you? Like, would you have felt that much differently at 63-99 or 64-98 than you did 60-102?
I mean, I can confidently say no. Like, that's my opinion. I think that, honestly, like, just looking at a lot of preseason predictions on what our record would be, I think a lot of people undershot it. Like, I think the fact that we even got close to 60 wins was a little bit of a surprise for some people. But ultimately, it's, hundreds, it's a round number, right? It's this, not in baseball, you wouldn't call it aesthetically pleasing, only on the win side. But 100 losses, 99 losses versus 100 losses does not move the needle. We're still bottom barrel of the league. We're still in a good position to get a high draft pick for this upcoming year. So I think for me, it doesn't really change much.
Yeah, I mean, same here. To me, if you lose 90 or more games, you're pretty much like you said, bottom of the barrel. It's a good way to put it. And I know 2024 was 30 losses worse than that. We don't have to talk about that right now. But to me, it's not do you lose 100 games, it's how do you lose 100 games and what do you have kind of going forward. And the main thing that was keeping me from picking a worse adjective in the last question is really Colson Montgomery. Like, we have someone that we can point to and say, hey, I can see this guy maybe being a star in the near future. Like, having that is just so crucial and something that really was unexpected given how poor he was faring in AAA this season. So that's why I'm saying they're just like bad and I'm disappointed, but it's not like the worst thing ever, right? Like 2024, there was really little to point out on the major league team other than Garrett Crochet, who they traded. So now at least you have, I mean, not just Montgomery, I don't need to start naming everybody, but there are actual signs of hope, right? So to that point, no, I don't really care that they lost 100 or more because I can at least squint and see a direction now.
Yeah, that was the big thing for me. And yeah, like 3 additional wins, who gives a shit? Like, we are talking where this team is at. I was just surprised by some of the discourse on social media being so about they might not lose 100 games. Who cares? They're still the worst team in the American League. It really doesn't matter. So at the end of the day, Nick, I think you hit on it perfectly. It's like my end goal is like, is there a star of this rebuild, a homegrown star? There has to be, because if not, we're in deep shit. And to your point, Montgomery, I always like to throw Teal in that group. Like that alone was enough of a positive for me, even if those probably weren't the positives I was expecting. And as we get into the predictions in a little bit, a predictions review, I think you'll see that reflected in players we picked when we did that draft, but also in page-wide predictions as well. There were things that came out of players that we didn't expect to, but there are also things that we expected out of players that didn't come out. At the end of the day, though, they did get 2 potential stars. That feels like a good enough win without being like, oh my God, World Series 2026, 2027. I think we have found the happy medium with that. But with that, let's talk a little bit about those preseason predictions. We'll take it in 2 different areas here. The first, all of our page predictions as a whole, but also some things we either talked about on the podcast. As we mentioned, Duke is not here tonight, so we will just get to clown him for his picks. He cannot defend himself. This is my favorite place to be. So we'll have to have Brett give some of his feedback on everything as well as we go through this. Let's start with some of the main general predictions. MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year. Nick, you went with Shane Smith for all 3, and I feel like you can lay claim to one of those, the Cy Young.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably fair. I think you can make an argument for him for Rookie of the Year and MVP, but I agree that Cy Young is definitely where he has the best argument. But overall, I'm really happy with that one just because in spring training, people were very high on Davis Martin, and I still like Davis Martin.
Watch it.
He had a solid year.
Oh, yeah.
Things are about to go somewhere right after this.
You got to watch your words, Nick.
Yeah, I know. No, Davis Martin had a solid year. I'm not like a hater or anything. But watching their spring training outings, not talking about the numbers, how they looked, I was watching Shane Smith and saying, hey, this guy's dotting like 98 on the corners, and he seems to have good off-speed stuff too. So, like, it wasn't so much that I thought Davis Martin wouldn't have a good year. It was more so I wanted to be different. And I said, you know what, Shane Smith looks just as good, if not better, so I'm picking him for all this stuff. And seems to have aged well. I mean, we'll see how he does next year, of course, but it's hard to complain about a Rule 5 pick who is an all-star. So those are definitely my best predictions there.
To go from unheralded to make that pick at the beginning of the year, like, I think there were a lot of us that were kind of like, oh, cool, great story. He makes the rotation. He's on the roster. That's great. But to have that actualized, like, I don't think I could have saw that coming. I don't know about you, Jordan, but
I was so hesitant on like buying into Shane Smith. I was on, I think it was either the 108's main podcast or Beef Loaf's individual one, where I was like, I don't know if I would put him in the rotation to start. Like, he had some bad blow-ups towards the end of spring training. Like, I'm just not sure, especially when we're talking Rule 5 pick. I think in general, when you look at like things and predictions I did, like, it was all safe. Like, Davis Martin felt safe because I wasn't sure where the star power was coming from. To your point, Nick, like, a solid season, I probably would have wanted more. I would have wanted more of a step forward than what we got out of him. That being said, like, yeah, I don't like it's hard. It's like, yes, you have to balance that upside versus just staying the course. And I thought you ended up doing that really well with Shane Smith. Like you could make a case for MVP and Rookie of the Year as well. I don't know if we'll come to agreement on it necessarily, but for MVP, Brett, you took Robert Jr., which I think is a fair pick to take. It just didn't end up that way. And Miguel Vargas, like for part of the season, might have been an MVP. I don't think any of those three ended up being the MVP. I'd probably give it to Montgomery, just from a WAR perspective. And I think it's a fair argument, though, still at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to... I feel like I go so back and forth between like a Colson or even Kyle Teal. Like, you know, like obviously the Colson's WAR is better and some of the like flashier things are better, but just like the consistent level of play that we saw for Teal for a lot longer than I think we all expected, just because we were fortunate that a lot of these guys didn't come up in like September or like August. We actually got to see extended run with it. So, I mean, I personally could even give them like co-MVP in my book.
Well, it wasn't that many episodes ago where we had a conversation like who's going to be the bigger star, Teal and Montgomery, and I think it's quick to say Montgomery. And funny enough, on that episode, I'm like, I'm still convinced by something in Teal that there's maybe a more consistent element to his play that's going to help him out long term. Obviously, yes, from a WAR argument, Montgomery almost worth one more win in such a time span. It's like maybe you make that argument, but Teal's right there, and I think he's going to continue to be right there, which is always the impressive part for me.
Yeah, Teal, the way that I look at it kind of is, if I were thinking about team MVP, Montgomery, Teal, and Shane Smith are probably the only three I would say are worthy of being in the conversation. The reason I would go Montgomery over Teal for 2025 is because Montgomery was very good on both sides of the ball, whereas Teal's defense is, you know, depending on how you're viewing it, has more room to grow. It was still better than Caro's, but, you know, still not good, I would say. Whereas Montgomery was genuinely a very good defensive shortstop, which I did not see coming, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that because the reports on his defense coming up they weren't terrible, but it was kind of like, oh, can he stick at shortstop? Will he move to third base? And then he comes to the majors and he plays, you know, more than just, he plays third base as well, but he looks really natural at shortstop. So combined with his offense, I think that kind of gives him the upper hand over Teal, but still very encouraged for sure by Teal this year.
Yeah, I think everyone was resigned. Not everyone, but there was a lot of resignment to the fact that, hey, he's just going to move to third base and that's going to be what it is. Like, to go out and not have to be a third baseman, like that just increases his long-term value in terms of star factor by a ton. And it's nice to see that he was able to do that.
And now he's locked himself to the position and, you know, he can just get consistent playing time there next year, which is awesome.
Right. As we look at some of the other Rookie of the Year picks, Kyle Teal out of Tim. I will say Tim's not going to get much love out of me ever for anything. Tim Moran did a really, really good job with some of his preseason predictions, even though he's not on this episode. He picked Teal. I picked my draw. Again, there's a safe factor with everything I did except maybe Vargas. I think you're having the same conversation there, Teal versus Montgomery, but Shane Smith being an all-star, like that kind of has to mean something. Like, if it comes down to those three, I feel pretty good about where things ended up for the White Sox. All right, the last thing I'll call out here, some of our record predictions. I went with 56 and 106. What did you go with, Nick? I think you're like one win more than that. Yeah 57 and 105.
Yeah.
Brett, you were, for Mr. Positivity, you were the least positive out of all of us, Mr. 54 and 108. But
and honestly, and that was more of a hopeful prediction. Like, I really was not in a good spot when we were making these predictions of, oh boy, we are mired in well below mediocrity again.
Shout out to Maddie, though. 61 and 101 was her prediction. So she was the closest, even though she overshot it. So technically it should be whoever didn't overshoot the win number, but we won't go with that because we definitely won't go with that because I'd have to give it to Tim. And I don't want to give it to Tim.
Of course.
So that's why we're not doing that. Congratulations, Maddie. overall, it is funny to look back through some of these predictions too. Breakout seasons, pretty much everyone picked either Shane Smith or Miguel Vargas. And I think
Joe, that's an awful pick.
Yeah, Joe picked Jonathan Cannon. That didn't go so well. Yeah, that one felt out of left field for me. Only other thing, we were all pretty resigned to the fact that Luis Robert was gone. Here's where I'll give Nick some credit. You were basically 50-50 on him going. You picked 51%. The rest of us, at least 70 to 75%. Like, I was at 95%. Like, I think we were all convinced he was gone. The 2% you left to hope, Brett, seems to have worked at the end of the day.
Let's go.
None of our hot takes were actually, Nick, yours wasn't bad, except it was kind of backwards. You said starting pitching would be solid, but a terrible offense and bullpen would hold the team back. Like, that was true until they started bringing up all the prospects.
Yeah, in the first half, that was true. Yeah.
Brett, the Sox only had one All-Star, not two. Sorry, your hot take didn't work. Miguel Vargas will receive MVP votes. At a certain point, that sounded okay. Like, I feel like I wrote this right when I traded for him in fantasy baseball. So, like, I was on a streak somewhere with him.
I see the vision. Yeah.
It's like, you got to speak it into existence, right? So, overall, though, I like the predictions. I don't think there was anything outlandish about what anyone said. I think we were all kind of in the ballpark on everything, and I'll take that anytime.
Yeah, agreed.
Where we weren't all in the ballpark, so a few episodes into the season, what Duke, Nick, and I did was a little bit of a draft of sorts where we each did a snake draft, picked players from the 2025 White Sox that we thought would accumulate the most wins above replacement by the end of the season. Nick and I did pretty well. And we took almost completely different strategies to get there, which is funny. I'll start with Duke, and Brett, I'm going to turn it to you to just clown these picks. So I had 6.5 wins, Nick 5.7, and Duke 1.9. So we weren't even in the same zip code there. He picked Benintendi, Baldwin, Jonathan Cannon, Lenyn Sosa, and Corey Lee. You can either choose to defend him and what he was thinking, or clown him, Brett. The stage is yours.
Duke, this is just to you. Jordan, Nick, you don't have to listen. None of you viewers, listeners don't have to listen, but Duke going with the homer picks was a horrible idea. Especially leading off with Benintendi, if that was your first pick after all. My God, that's bad. I'm honestly surprised just looking at this that Jonathan Cannon and Corey Lee had positive WAR, because it didn't seem like it. But, hey, to give you your props, Lenyn Sosa was a good pick. I have to tip my cap to you, Duke.
Yeah, he got Sosa out of it. Nick, you probably could have won the Caro first overall. So it was Nick went first, then I went, and then Duke. Nick had the first overall pick. I went with Edgar Caro, who had a solid season, but just not good enough offensively to make up for the defense. You did hedge your bets, though. Caro, Montgomery, Robert Jr., Schultz, and Kyle Teal. So you didn't even get anything out of Schultz, which I picked Brian Ramos. So we both got nothing out of one of our picks and still found a way. So credit to you, too, Nick, even if Caro didn't work out how you would have wanted him to.
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously see what I was thinking. I think he got called up for good in April, so he played pretty much a full major league season in Chicago. So I was kind of banking on the defense being at least a little bit better so that he would have positive WAR. But Montgomery kind of saved me there by playing as well as he did. Noah Schultz, yeah, that was another one where I think most of us were expecting him to come up in the second half of the season, but his stuff just wasn't quite there this season. He had some injuries, so I'll own the 0 there. But yeah, overall, I mean, not to pile on Duke too badly, but just to reiterate, Benintendi was not on my board at all of players that I was considering to pick, like not even in the 5th round, because even a good good by his standards, Benintendi, it's not going to produce a lot of WAR because he doesn't really play good defense and he plays left field. So like he would be like a best case scenario half a win player. But Duke took him in the 1st round, and I was all right. This is not going the way I expected. So overall, I feel like if we used the other WAR, I probably would have fared a little bit better because Carroll was probably positive, and Jordan probably doesn't get as much out of Grant Taylor because the Fangraphs WAR that we used uses FIP instead of ERA. But overall, I can't really complain with us.
Well, Jordan, you would have gotten bamboozled on Grant Taylor if we had used a baseball reference WAR.
How much did he have B-WAR wise?
Well, yeah, what is it? Do you know?
Well, I just know that his ERA FIP discrepancy was just so high that, you might have gotten gypped on Grant Taylor, but it was still a good pick for what you did, though.
Well, the theory there was exactly what happened. They're just going to bring him up and pitch him out of the bullpen. I'm like, they will absolutely do exactly that because that is who they are and what they do. Yeah, he accumulated 0 B-WAR, baseball reference WAR.
Wow.
He had 1.7 Fangraphs WAR. That is a huge discrepancy. But also, we did decide early on to do Fangraphs. So
we did.
It was all decided ahead of time. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a decent theory. Like, assuming you thought you picked 2 catchers too and a shortstop. Like, you assumed the defense would be better than what it was.
Right.
So and you also picked Robert Jr. Like, you played it knowing you were basing off of Fangraphs WAR. So credit to you on that. My picks were Mydroth, Smith, Davis Martin, Grant Taylor, Brian Ramos. Like that again. My theme was just safe everything. Like my predictions, the players I picked, everything was safe. Guys I knew were going to get run, were going to get playing time. No one really stood out that much other than Smith. And thankfully, we used F-WAR instead of B-WAR. Like, that's all I got to say.
Mm-hmm.
Duke, I knew it from the day we put these things together. I'm like, cool. I'm at least getting second, so I wasn't too worried at the end of the day.
Yeah, because Benintendi, bad defense. Brooks Baldwin, not great defense. Lenine Sosa, yep. So that right there kind of ruins the floor a little bit.
It's always fun to look back at those, though. I don't beat a dead horse too much with poor Duke, especially when he's not here to defend himself. It is fun to look back
Duke.
at these.
You're better than Jordan and I by getting married.
It is at least fun to look back at these and be like, okay, like I see what the vision was. I see what happened. I think this ended up being far more interesting because we took different risks on who we picked. And, I think if we could all go back in time and we knew Colson Montgomery would not only be up, but be playing, you would have seen him at least on our page picks, like some MVP, some Rookie of the Year. Like you would have seen a little bit more of that. But also that's kind of the fun of the season. It's been nice with Chris Getz to be as aggressive as he's been at times with calling up top prospects. And that from a fan perspective, I think that's appreciated. Any final thoughts? I want to wrap up 2025. Like we all talked about it. We're kind of done with it. We see the positives, but let's stop talking about it. Any final thoughts about any part of the game before we never talk about the 2025 season again?
I've got one thing.
Okay.
I've got one thing. I didn't expect that I would be feeling the way I do at the end of the season, but I genuinely miss seeing Colson Montgomery, Kyle Teal, Chase Mydroth, Mike Vassell, Shane Smith. Like I miss seeing that energy and that like level of play on the field. And I did not think I would be walking away from this season like missing anything. I thought it would just be on to 2026. But it's weird, but gives like this like slight bit of hope. But I didn't expect to feel this way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think they really saved themselves there with the second half because if that whole second half offensive surge didn't happen, I would probably feel a lot more apathetic than I do. But like you, I feel more like, I kind of wish they were playing tonight. And only other thing I want to say is, just because we haven't talked about him at all, I think actually, Jordan, I think you put him as a player you're higher on coming into the season. But Brooks Baldwin, I feel like, is not getting talked about that much, and that's fine. But ever since he got called back up on July 1st, he had an OPS over 800. And I know he still doesn't really have a defensive home, but there's enough power in that bat, even with low OBP, even with, let's say mediocre at best defense. If he plays that many positions and he hits the occasional home run like he has been. That's a player that I think is worth keeping around. So I'm definitely interested to see what's in store for him next year and whether he has like an actual role, if he kind of remains in this like super utility kind of cloud. But either way, he's a guy who isn't really getting his due, I think, for how he played in the second half.
If he's the 10th man, then I like it.
Yeah. Like, I think it's nice to see that even going into next season, there will be competition at positions. It might not be great competition. Like, you're talking about maybe utility man battle or certain guys that might not be starters on this team when it's all said and done, when they finally find a way to become competitive. But it's at least nice to know that the incumbents don't just have to sit there. That's a credit to Getz, and that's a credit to Venable, who's kind of my final discussion point. I might not agree with some of the personnel decision changes they decided to make with the coaching staff, but I feel good about him as the manager. I feel like they got maybe not the guy, but a good guy. Like, I'm not concerned about that moving forward, and I think in reflecting on it, some of the crap from Dodgers and Yankees fans over the past couple weeks when like the Sox were just intentionally walking Aaron Judge, or during the Kershaw 3,000K game where like they just refused to strike out. That's more of a culture shift for me than anything else. Like, yes, it's partially approach, it's wanting to win games, but it's just, we're not going to let you get what you want at the end of the day just because you're playing one of the worst teams in baseball. I think that's a dramatic culture shift, having won 19 more games than last season, where people are like, I don't see 19 more wins on this team. Like, a lot of that is a credit to the culture he is improving. And again, in not a great season, to be able to at least know the guy in charge in the dugout is a guy you want there, I feel good about that. We'll see what some of the coaching changes bring, but he's, at least in my mind, earned the benefit of the doubt of, hey, you know what you want, you know what you're looking for in the dugout, and some of the guys you already brought in are solid, but more importantly, you're creating a culture that is going to be one that sees players get better, and that's what's important to me at the end of the day. And it's kind of my final thought on this. It's all been fun. I think it encompasses everything. It was more fun. We're missing not watching games, like you're saying, Brett. And at the end of the day, it's very much on what he has done throughout this season. So are we ready to put a bow on it? Never talking about it again until we talk about it in like 30 seconds when we start talking about off-season plans. Last chance.
With me.
Good? All right.
All good.
Bow's on. We're done. All right. Now let's talk about the offseason. I don't want to go too much into it because there's still so much that has to happen. You don't know who's going to be available, who's not going to be available, who's picking up options, who's not, all that stuff. So we don't have to go that deep into it. That being said, I want us to at least start thinking about it. Let's just say the White Sox hired you as a consultant, or they brought you on to their analytics staff, whatever it might be. You're allowed to recommend one signing, one trade, one move in general to the front office this offseason. What is your recommendation?
Go ahead, Brett. I don't want to go first for this one.
I gotta
Nick
be
just
first.
pulled rank. He's like, no, you're doing this.
Ouch. All right. Well, I've been back and forth in my mind between two ideas, but the one that I'm gonna roll with is you find someone to trade for Lenyn Sosa.
That's a good one.
I like the idea of trying to get the infield a little less crowded. And if Sosa is going to be that much of a potential liability with defense, we're getting to this point where, Maedroth has really established himself at second base. And that's where Sosa had been for quite a long time. And now that you have, flexibility of playing Miguel Vargas at third or first, if you keep Benintendi on the roster, which that's probably going to happen too, he's going to DH at times. If they decide to get on with Tauchman, he'll have to DH. You get what I mean. We're not going to have this consistent DH opportunity for Sosa. And I think that you can attempt to capitalize on the value. My other idea was to look into starting pitchers, but just looking at this class right now, like, I wouldn't give like great money to a frontline starter by any means. Just give me a couple guys who are just going to be the Chad innings eaters. But I'm not going to go too specific in the names on that, just because I don't really think it matters.
Well, I know for a fact that's not going to be Nick's recommendation.
Why do you know for a fact?
Because you're the Lenyn Sosa fanboy there. Unless you're going to tell me you're agreeing with him.
Well, no. I definitely see the logic behind saying there's a glut of infielders with Vargas, Sosa, Midroth, Montgomery for 3 spots. And that's without even including like a Curtis Mead, for example. So I definitely get the logic.
I like Sosa. I gotta make sure that's clarified here. I like Sosa.
Yeah, right.
Like that high of a batting average with home runs, like we'll take it. But besides the point.
Right. And I think what I'm interested to see is Sosa and Vargas are both 25. They're like 2 months apart in age. I wouldn't be surprised if there's one more jump coming from both of them in terms of the offensive performance. And I wouldn't necessarily place a bet. Like, I'm not really comfortable saying who it would be from because they both have pedigree. They both have a history of good performance in the minors. And now they have kind of have their feet wet in the majors with a full couple of years. Then, I kind of think one more jump could be coming. So it's possible that you trade one of them, most likely Sosa, because of his, other deficiencies, and maybe regret it because he comes into more power or something happens, some other jump happens. But I definitely see the logic. And kind of to your other one too, for starting pitching, there are obviously a lot of options the White Sox currently have in their rotation. And then you also have guys like Drew Thorpe coming back from injury, Mason Adams, upper minors guys like Tanner McDougal, Hagen Smith, and Noah Schultz. They have a lot of options. So for me, my recommendation would be the only areas we have not talked about in the last 2 minutes are corner outfield and first base. I mean, I know, Brett, you said Benintendi, and there's really probably not much you can do there. So my recommendation would be to sign like a Josh Naylor, for example. I know he's a very divisive figure, but somebody whose profile fits the team well, somebody who gets on base and or hits for power. He kind of is like does a little bit of both of those things, and he's a lefty. So I like the fit, and I know that it's, again, like a divisive player, but I've never personally hated him the way other White Sox fans do. I mean, yes, I remember the day he hit those home runs off Liam Hendricks, and obviously I wasn't happy with him at the time, but it's like he's a player having fun and like showing emotion, and ultimately I like that. I just wish it were on my team, not against my team.
Well, here's the one thing about the Sosa argument as well that I do want to call out, because I have, if you listen at all, I've been the first one banging the trade him drum at multiple points. I would have shipped him out of the trade deadline at parts. The reason I balk at it is because, yes, you both mentioned kind of the glut of infielders. None of them have established themselves. Like, yeah, this is the guy moving forward. Like, Vargas might have, but the power's not good enough for first base and the defense isn't good enough for third base. Mead hit no home runs, I believe, with the White Sox once he came over. So there's a power concern. Midroth really struggled at the end of the season. Like, his defense is there, but this is not going to be a just defensive-only option, I don't think. And that leaves Sosa as well. As much of a glut as it feels like, I feel like the competition would still do them well enough to where maybe they don't trade him, at least yet. And then maybe if someone establishes themselves, or if he just figures out, like puts a brain in his head, for lack of a better term, then maybe we have a different conversation come the next couple of months into next season.
Honestly, I just didn't have enough faith in actually signing someone here, so I kind of only thought about it from the trade perspective, because they've been shown to do that a couple off seasons now.
Which is fair. And I mean, again, it's a very rational, this has been a conversation we've had multiple times, and Sox fans have had ad nauseum to, like, just trade him, get this over with. Like, no one seems to think it's worth it. And I see the arguments on both sides, I guess.
Yeah. All right, Jordan, what are we doing? What's the idea?
I don't think you guys are ready for this one.
Oh, no.
Probably not.
But if I had one recommendation, because it's easy, like for me, it's easy. Yes, go ahead, improve the defense. Like get a starter or two. You need some power. Like those are for me. Those are the obvious ones. I'm like, okay, what else would we do? I would recommend exploring, and this is not going to surprise Nick, I don't think, exploring a trade of Edgar Caro. And the reason being that there is no world in which I think this two catcher situation works out exactly how they want. It's all stats based for me still right now. The way Teal performed this season, I'm convinced. Like you talk about performance on the field, prospect rankings, he was in the 20s and 30s. I think Caro was as high as 75 maybe. So there's a gap of enough in tiers. So I'm like, these guys are performing similar to probably what their pedigree is. That being said, Edgar Caro is still a major league starting catcher. I just don't think there's room for two of them. And knowing historical spending tendencies, I would rather trade him for a position of need, given his 5 years of control and starting caliber play, and maybe get a starting pitcher or maybe get a bat that way. That would be my exploration. Now, I don't know. There are plenty of teams desperate for a catcher. I don't know how it would match up, but that's what I personally would do. I would recommend exploring a trade for Edgar Caro.
You know what sucks, Jordan, is that I like Edgar Caro. Just there's a lot of tools that I like about him, but I actually really don't hate your idea.
I would like that in writing, if at all possible. Just frame it. I was like, I don't hate that.
Off to Canva to make a graphic. Don't mind me. But honestly, like, I think you're right though. Like this two catcher situation, long term, I don't think it's going to be able to work out in the way that, they were able to mix and match this year, right? Because ultimately that's going to, like, in my mind, I'm with you. I'm high on Teal. There's a lot of good things that there are offensively, but also I think, as we mentioned earlier, there's still some room to improve on the defense side, of course. But I just think that it's going to limit one or the other or both if they're splitting this much time.
Yeah, I agree. I think long term it's definitely not going to work. And I get the idea. The only thing I'd push back on is, at least in my head, the way I've been kind of projecting it, I want them to keep doing this two catcher situation for 2026, just to give both players another year to really show more of where they're going to be, and then make the trade decision the next offseason, because Caro was the youngest catcher in baseball, Major League Baseball this season. And I think a lot of the negative defensive metrics can be attributed to that. He also, from a prospect ranking standpoint, the Angels kind of screwed him by skipping high A, and that's why he repeated it with the White Sox. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff in his career, minor league career. But I kind of think that given his age and his profile in the minors, I think he's going to hit for more power next year. Not like a crazy 30 home run catcher, but maybe 15 to 20 next year I could see home runs. And I think Teal will be similar, but I just kind of the same fear I have with Sosa, but obviously much greater because Sosa's more of a known quantity. I'm afraid of trading Caro and then Caro becoming a perennial all-star catcher. And I know that you're risking his value going down by waiting a year to trade, and that might be the counter argument. But I don't see it cratering. I think Caro, like you said, Jordan, is a starting catcher long term. So I'm comfortable holding for another year, but I definitely see where you're coming from.
I think that's the fair counter argument, is how the value's not really going lower, except you're losing a season of control. That's the change in value. I would agree. I don't think he's cratering by any means. And to your point, there might be the way I could see this working, where they don't trade one of the two, is that they teach Teal first base. He keeps power numbers where they were towards the end of the season, because it can't be where they were at the start. And then Caro really, really improves that defense behind the plate. If they could do both of those things, then it works. I'm concerned about Teal hitting 20 to 25, even maybe needing 30 home runs at a certain point to play that position. And I'm concerned about the defense from Caro. Granted, to your point, he's the youngest catcher. I understand all of that. So my then, I guess what I would say next from there is, let's reassess this at the trade deadline. Like they will both have plenty of playing opportunity. It will look much like it did second half of this season with them again this year. I do agree it's maybe a little bit early to jump the gun, but if you get something that just blows you away, take it. If you don't and you're like, hey, we can get something similar-ish in the future, then wait the extra 5-6 months and then pull the trigger. I just think this is going to come to a crossroads at some point where it's really cool to have two great catchers. But this isn't like football where you're two great running backs. You're not really concerned. Like you can only put them out there so many times. And if one of them eventually catches 120 games, well, that other 40 just isn't that valuable to you anymore. Like that can be anybody taking those 40 backup spots. So that I just know it's going to come to a head at some point because neither of them is good enough to be a full-time DH. Neither of them is bad enough to be a full-time DH either. Let's be honest. They're both strong enough defensively. So I just know it's coming, and I know it's fun for now, but because it's coming, I want to at least start exploring it.
And I don't hate the idea, Nick, that you have to maybe keep doing it for next year. I don't hate that either, just because like they're young. They're like, I don't think either of them would have 100 games catching under the belt at this point.
Right. Yeah. And, this is maybe too good of an example because, this is a really good outcome, but the Blue Jays had Kirk, Moreno, and Jansen, and they traded Moreno for Dalton Varsho. And that, so far, I would argue has been a win-win for both teams. And I don't think Carroll will have the kind of trade value that Moreno had. He was more of like a top 10, 15, like a Kyle Teal level prospect. But if you can get, a power hitting outfielder for him, even this offseason, yeah, I would have to consider it because it's, those guys are expensive these days in free agency. And we all know that the White Sox don't really swim in those waters. So you gotta get that need addressed somehow. So I'm not like super opposed to the idea, but to Jordan's point, would have to be a really good package. I'm not going to trade him just to trade him yet.
Right. You would have to, by trading him, you would have to fill an immediate need somewhere else. This is not a prospect trade, right? This is not, we're getting a team's number 2, number 1 overall prospect. This is not how this works. You're not in a position to trade known quote unquote commodities for prospects at this point. So it's more so, hey, the Varsho Moreno swap is a great comparison. D-backs had a need, Blue Jays had a need, they helped each other. Let's just flip them. Easy deal like that. I think something similar to that would be worthwhile at this juncture because of just everything we know. Now, if they decide they're going to increase payroll and they're going to spend $25 million a year on Cody Bellinger, cool. That's easy. Like, let's do that. Like, it's always easier to just spend money. But the alternative is, okay, I have excess value or ample value at one position that happens to be a position that is not easy to find value in baseball. Let's move it elsewhere without really detrimenting the current team. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you could look back and be like, what a moron were you in 3-4 years when we review where this team is at. At the same time, though, I still feel confident saying in 3-4 years, one of those two guys is not on the team. And if they both are, it's because one moved to first base and developed a ton of power. Otherwise, I just don't see it. So it's a credit to both of them, to be clear, that I would even entertain that discussion. So I don't know. Those were 3 solid consultant-like recommendations. So good job to everybody. I think it covers a little bit of everything. Like, here are the needs. Here's what you should do. But also, we know who you are. So let's see what happens. And I think that's kind of my entire thought on this team in general right now is I know who you are. This has been fun. So let's just see what happens. And there's certainly a lot of questions still to be answered long term about the coaching staff, the players, that I'm very much looking forward to getting over the course of this season or this offseason heading into next season. So, but for now, I say that does it for episode 96 of the Sox On 35th podcast. Brett, Nick, thank you for jumping on. Always appreciate you both and your insights. Like I said, I'm very happy to move on from this and start thinking what happens next with this team. So Thank you all for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. SoxOn35th.com is the website. At SoxOn35th is the social media handle. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You know where to find us at this point if you're 96 episodes into this. As I mentioned at the top, thank you to everyone for their support throughout the season, for listening. I think about things like the Southpaw's birthday tailgate this year. Like there was a lot of fun that happened with the fan base, the community. And I know I speak for everybody when I say we appreciate all the support that comes in, especially, like I said, when this team is difficult to support, the fan base stays strong. And it's a credit to everyone in it that, we still feel the need to put podcast episodes out because there are people listening. So thanks to everyone who does that, who reads the articles, who interacts on social media, everything. It's truly appreciated. And it's not said often enough, but at the end of a season where we all covered a team that lost 102 games, I think it's more important than ever to express those words of thanks. So for Brett Haffner and Nik Gaur, this is Jordan Lazowski signing off. We will be back soon-ish. This is kind of the end of our regular weekly cadence, and whenever the Sox give us news. So be sure to subscribe, be sure to follow along. We will be back at some point. But for now, thank you as always for listening, and go Sox.
Go Sox.
Go Sox. Let's go.